Namaste children, welcome back again to this virtual class. So we have completed all your chapters of class 10 science. So this episode onwards we are going to revise all the chapters. Once the revision process is over, then we can see the frequently asked questions in the CBSE examination. So still we have time. Your examination starts from 4th May of this year, so we have plenty of time. If not started seriously, then still you have time, plenty of time. So today, this episode onwards, you focus on the subject, then you will get good marks also. So let us revise the first chapter, that is the chemical reactions and equations. Dear students, chemical reaction is the process by which a chemical change occurs. So nothing more is required to understand about chemical reaction, so you should know the chemical change. And when we talk about chemical reactions, how can we identify for a chemical reaction? So this is very important. In the examination also, the type of question is asked. In order to identify a chemical reaction, there are some indications. So what are those indications? The first one is change in state. What is that? That is change in state. What is the change in state? During a chemical reaction, we can observe change in state. For example, during a chemical reaction, a solid substance may change into liquid, a liquid substance may go into gas. For example, when a candle is burnt, then we are very much familiar that it melts and finally goes into vapor state. So this is a chemical reaction. Burning of a candle is a chemical reaction. Or when a carbon is burnt, then it changes into carbon dioxide, which is a gas. So here also we can see change in state. So change in state is one of the indication for a chemical reaction. Second one is change in color. Color change may also occur during a chemical reaction. For example, when sodium sulfate reacts with the barium chloride, then you see white precipitate. And in the second chapter also, the acid, bases and salts, when carbon dioxide is passed through a freshly prepared lime water, then the lime water turns milky, right? So this is one of the example where you can see change in color. So change in color can be thought of an indication of a chemical reaction. Third one is change in temperature. During a chemical reaction, change in temperature may occur. For example, when calcium oxide reacts with the water, or when calcium oxide is put in water, then you can see change in temperature. One more familiar example is when bleaching powder is mixed with water, you feel warm. So the temperature gets increased, right? So change in temperature is also one of the indication for a chemical reaction. So what else? Another one is evolution of gas. Evolution of gas is also an indication for a chemical reaction. For example, when metal reacts with the acid, in the second chapter you must have studied, when metal reacts with acid, a gas is evolved, right? So that gas is hydrogen gas. So evolution of gas is also an indication for a chemical reaction. So when we talk about chemical reaction, so these are the indications by which we can understand for existence or occurrence of a chemical reaction. So okay, what is chemical reaction? We know. Now, followed by chemical reaction, we should know the chemical equation also. What is a chemical equation? Chemical equation is the symbolic representation of a chemical reaction. So, in order to write a chemical equation, the symbols of the substances that take part in a chemical reaction has been written, right? So for example, one of the familiar examples we are taking here, when carbon reacts with oxygen gives carbon dioxide, is one of the chemical reaction. So it can be written as carbon is the C is the symbol of carbon, reacts with O2 is the oxygen molecule, gives carbon dioxide, right? So this is one of the chemical, this way we can write chemical equation. And similarly, magnesium ribbon, when magnesium ribbon burns in air, we get magnesium oxide. So here you see the symbols of the elements or the substances that take part in a chemical reaction is written. So the symbolic representation of a chemical reaction is known as chemical equation. And when we talk about chemical equation, after writing each and every chemical equation, that chemical equation must be balanced. Now the question comes, so why should we balance a chemical reaction? So this is supported by one of the fact that in the 9th standard you must have studied law of conservation of mass, right? So what law of conservation of mass says? According to law of conservation of mass, it says during a chemical reaction, mass is neither created nor destroyed, right? So in order to preserve the law of conservation of mass, each and every chemical reaction or the equation must be balanced. From the previous learning, I believe you understood how to balance a chemical equation. So as far as balancing is concerned, we have to make total number of elements on the left hand side must be equal to the total number of elements in the product side. So left hand side must be equal to the right hand side, right? Let us try to balance this simple equation. Here you see magnesium, right? So here you see we write magnesium is 1 and oxygen we have 2. On the right hand side magnesium we have 1, oxygen we have 1. If we see magnesium atom on both the sides, you can see they are 1 1. Whereas oxygen you see here left hand side is 2 and right hand side 1. We have to make this 2. So in order to make this 2, we have to put here 2. So this become 2. Upon increasing it, magnesium also got increased, this we write. So we have to increase this, so we put here, so we get. So this way we try to balance the chemical equation, right? So it takes much time to balance the chemical reaction. So the main thing is you have to keep working on it, to keep practicing more and more practice, then you will able to balance a chemical reaction in no time. So instead of writing all these things right away, you can balance the chemical equation. Once the balancing process is over, still we have to look into the chemical equation, since we need to write the state symbols. So state symbol is also one of the important thing which we need to look into. So when we talk about the state symbols, there are some states available, right? State symbols. Let us talk about once again state symbol. They are solid is one state, liquid is another state, gases is another state, right? So we write the symbol of the first letter of these. So these are the state symbols for solid, liquid and gases, right? Yet some other state symbols exist. One is aqueous, right? Aqueous symbol, this you should know. Aqueous, the symbol is AQ. What is aqueous? Aqueous means anything which is dissolved in water, we call it as aqueous. For example, when sugar is dissolved in water, we get a solution. We call that solution aqueous solution of sugar. Likewise, we can make salt solution. When salt is added into water, we get salt solution. We call that solution as aqueous solution of salt. So aqueous is anything which is dissolved in water. So we have seen the indication for a chemical reaction, how to write a chemical equation, how to balance this. Once the balancing process is over, then we need to write the state symbols. Once the state symbol is over, one more thing we have to look into, that is we have to see the reaction condition. Dear students, carbon is there in the nature, oxygen is also there in the nature. They do not react on its own. In order to react, they must be heated. So here we have to heat, right? So heat is the reaction condition. Dear students, each and every chemical reaction takes place with the help of some reaction conditions. So as far as chemical equation is concerned, we have to write the reaction condition, and the reaction condition is to be written over or below the arrow. So here heat is one of the reaction condition. At some other reaction condition are there. We have there are certain chemical reactions. Upon cooling, the chemical reaction will take place. With the help of a catalyst, it takes place. Some of the chemical reaction takes place with the help of sunlight, with the help of electricity. So all those are the reaction conditions required for a chemical reaction to occur. All those reaction conditions are to be written above or below the arrow of a chemical equation. So once all those things are written, we can say that the chemical equation what we have written for a chemical reaction is complete. So this is all about understanding chemical reaction and equation. So this part is over. Once this is over, we move on to the second part, that is the chemical reaction. Dear students, chemical reactions are classified into different categories. How they take place, what are the raw materials that are being used. So let us have a quick recap on the four different types of chemical equation with the example. So first one is the combination reaction. Dear students, as far as examination is concerned, each reaction you have to understand, and for each reaction supporting chemical equation needs to be written. So what you need to do is, for each and every chemical reaction, each type of chemical reaction, you just by heart one chemical equation. With that chemical equation, you can write the definition. Let us take example. First one is combination reaction. For combination, we take C plus O2 gives CO2. You can write number of examples for combination reaction. It is not that one chemical reaction is fixed for that particular type. The same type of chemical equation or the chemical reaction may also be used in other types. In combination reaction, we have taken here carbon plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide, right? The same chemical equation can also be used in some other chemical reaction. Let us see all those things in a later section. Dear students, when we talk about combination reaction, you must be clear on the fact that there must have two or more reactants and one product. So you can see here carbon plus oxygen, two reactants are there and one product. And this, you look at here, magnesium plus oxygen gives magnesium oxide. Here also we find two reactants and one product, right? So the same example can also be used for a combination reaction, right? So how to define this? It is very simple. If you have the chemical equation in your hand, then expanding the chemical equation into words is very simple, right? So here carbon. So how can we write here? When carbon reacts with oxygen, gives carbon dioxide. So this is the combination reaction, or in other words we can say that when two or more than two reactants react to give single product, such a reaction is known as combination reaction. Second type of reaction is a decomposition reaction. You are very much familiar, right? Decomposition reaction. So here we write a short form reaction. So when we talk about decomposition reaction, it is just the opposite of the combination reaction. So decomposition reaction is one of the very important class of chemical reaction. So it is further classified into different categories. So before that, first you should understand about the decomposition reaction. So as far as decomposition reaction is concerned, here a single reactant splits into two or more simpler products. Such type of reaction is known as decomposition reaction, and this decomposition reaction takes place in three different ways: by using temperature, heat, by using sunlight, by using electricity. So on the basis of the reaction condition, the decomposition reaction is further classified into three categories. Let us see. First one is by using heat. When heat is used, it is called thermal decomposition. Thermo means what? Thermo means temperature, right? Heat. So by using heat, if the decomposition is taking place, then it is called thermal decomposition. Simple example: calcium carbonate. So triangle is the symbol of heat. Calcium carbonate undergoes decomposition. We get calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. Simple. Now we see the second type of, in place of here heat is used, so we call it as thermal decomposition. If sunlight is used, then it is called photolytic decomposition reaction. Take an example here. AgCl gives Ag plus Cl2. So this needs to be balancing. Okay, now you see sunlight. Here we have to write sunlight, right? So this is called photolytic decomposition reaction. Similar kind of reaction we have AgBr. Upon here we have to write sunlight, we get Ag plus Br2. So upon balancing we get this. So these two are the chemical reaction which can be classified under decomposition reaction. The third type is electricity. If it is taking place by using electricity, it is called, simply we call it as electrolysis, or we can write it as electrolytic decomposition. The example is H2O gives H2 plus O2. Here we write electricity. So you see here, when we study about the decomposition reaction, it is classified into three categories, right? Thermal decomposition reaction, this you keep in mind. Sunlight, that is photolytic. Third one is electricity, by using electricity. Now, sometimes in examination, different types of questions are asked under decomposition reaction. So in CBSE examination, the chemical reaction related to the photographic film is these reactions. So always keep in mind there. So these are the reactions that take place under the influence of sunlight. Got it, children? Now this is the thermal and this one is electrolytic decomposition reaction. So got it? Now we see this is the first type of chemical reaction got over. This is the second type of chemical equation. Now let us discuss the third type of chemical reaction, that is displacement reaction. Displacement reaction. Dear students, displacement reaction is one of the most familiar and most important class of chemical reaction. Let us write the equation, and from that you can understand. Here copper sulfate plus iron gives iron sulfate plus copper. I am just separating. Okay. So in displacement reaction, what happens? A highly reactive metal displaces less reactive metal from its salt solution. Now how can we understand this? See here, this is in this chemical reaction we find two metals. One is iron and another one is copper. If we see the reactivity of copper and iron is more reactive, and this is the salt. So this is copper sulfate solution. Now when iron is put in copper sulfate solution, what happens? Being more reactive, iron displaces copper from copper sulfate solution. So as a result of this, on the product side you see, when iron goes here and copper comes out. So we see here iron sulfate and copper. So such type of reaction in which a highly reactive metal displaces less reactive metal from its salt solution, we call it as a displacement reaction. Now as a result of this chemical reaction, you know that the color of copper sulfate solution is sky blue. So after the chemical reaction, you see here light green color solution, you will see it light green. So the color change we can see here, this color change is due to displacement reaction. And in the beginning of this class we have seen color change is one of the indication for a chemical reaction. So here sky blue color changes into light green color. So light green color or pale green color we can say. So this is called a displacement reaction. Likewise various other displacement reaction you can see. For that, in order to understand displacement reaction, you should know the reactivity series which you will be studying in the chapter metals and non-metals. Got it, children? Now the fourth type of chemical reaction is a double displacement reaction. Double displacement reaction. Dear students, in the above we have seen single metal, one metal displaces another. Single displacement we are seeing. right? Now double displacement reaction means in such reactions two metals are getting exchanged between, or the two ions are getting exchanged between two species. Let us take an example here. So in order to understand this, see here we take sodium sulfate Na2SO4 plus barium chloride BaCl2. Upon chemical reaction, what happens here? Barium sulfate plus sodium chloride. Now you can see here sodium and barium are the two metals, and this sodium comes over here and barium goes here. So two ions are getting exchanged between the species. So here you can see sodium and chlorine here, sodium chloride we are getting, so 2 NaCl, and barium plus sulfate we are getting barium sulfate, right? So here white color precipitate we are getting. This reaction is also known as precipitation reaction. This also you keep precipitation reaction. Why? Because barium sulfate so formed in this chemical reaction is insoluble. So the insoluble substance what we obtain is white in color. So the insoluble substance produced during a chemical reaction is called precipitate, and the reaction by which insoluble substance or the precipitate is produced, we call it as a precipitation reaction. So the double displacement reaction is also known as precipitation reaction. So these are the four most important chemical types of chemical reactions which we need to understand. Apart from these, some other chemical reactions also exist. Let us understand all those chemical equations in detail, and as per the examination how the question will be asked on those type of chemical reactions, about that we will see. Another important class of chemical reaction is oxidation reaction. So what is this oxidation reaction? Oxidation is related to an element called oxygen, right? So apart from this, simply try to understand the meaning of oxidation reaction. The removal of electron from an atom is known as oxidation reaction. Let us understand. Suppose here sodium gives sodium ion plus 1 electron. When 1 electron is removed from sodium atom, we get sodium ion. So here we can see very well that an electron is being removed from sodium atom. Such a type of reaction in which an element loses one or more electrons, we call it as oxidation reaction. So this process is oxidation. In terms of oxygen also we can define oxidation, that is addition of oxygen, is known as oxidation reaction. Let us take an example. Carbon plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide. Magnesium plus oxygen gives magnesium oxide. Both of these chemical reactions have already been taken for combination reaction, right? So that's why I told you that some of the chemical reactions are taken in such a way that the same chemical reaction we find it useful in some other type of chemical reaction. So these two chemical reactions have already been taken for combination reaction, since here we find two reactants and a single product. So that was the concept in case of combination reaction. Let us understand why these chemical reactions are considered under oxidation reaction. For that you should know the meaning of oxidation. Oxidation reaction means the addition of oxygen in a chemical reaction is known as oxidation process or oxidation reaction. You can see here carbon is there. On the product side you can see with carbon oxygen is being added, right? So here you see here oxygen is added, so the reaction is oxidation. Here also magnesium is an element over which oxygen is being added, right? So these reactions classified under oxidation reaction. Got it? Now let us understand about the reduction reaction. Reduction reaction. Reduction reaction is a type of reaction in which gaining of electron will take place. One or two electrons are gained by an element. For example, chlorine is one of the familiar example. when it gains one electron, it forms chlorine ion. In both the cases, you can see there sodium ion is formed, here chlorine ion is formed. For the formation of sodium ion, an electron is to be removed, whereas in case of chlorine, you see, for the formation of chlorine ion, an electron is to be gained. So gaining of electron is known as the reduction process. The reduction reaction can also be understood in terms of oxygen. We call it as the removal of oxygen is known as a reduction reaction. For example, here CuO plus H2 gives Cu plus H2O. You can see here very well that with copper, oxygen is there, right? On the product side, you see with copper, oxygen is not there. What happened to the oxygen? Oxygen is being removed. So the process, the chemical reaction in which oxygen is removed is known as a reduction reaction. So oxidation can be understood in terms of removal of electrons or addition of oxygen, whereas reduction reaction can be understood in terms of gaining of electrons or removal of oxygen. Now, another important class of chemical reaction is redox reaction. So, this is one of the most important redox type of reaction, that is redox reaction. Now, in the name itself, reduction, RED for reduction and OX for oxidation, the chemical reaction in which both oxidation and reduction takes place, such type of chemical reactions are known as a redox reaction. Let us understand with some example. For example, here you see Zn plus, here ZnO, this will not come, ZnO plus carbon gives carbon monoxide plus Zn. Here carbon is there. On the product side, look at the carbon, here oxygen is added. So this portion is oxidation reaction. Got it? In order to find the reduction reaction, you should know the reduction is the removal of oxygen. So for that, left hand side you see where the oxygen is attached to the zinc. On the product side you see zinc, there is no oxygen, so here we see removal of oxygen. So this is the reduction process. And in the redox reaction, we should know some other related terms also, that is oxidizing agent. Oxidizing agent, one more question asked, so you should know what is oxidizing agent and reducing agent. Now for that, you see here sodium is oxidized to sodium ion, carbon is oxidized to carbon dioxide, magnesium is oxidized to magnesium oxide. So this way we have to pronounce it. As far as reduction is concerned, chlorine is reduced to chlorine ion, copper oxide is reduced to copper. So this way we should understand. Now what is oxidizing and reducing agent? So oxidizing agent is those which supplies oxygen. So here in this chemical equation, which is the oxidizing agent, the substance which is capable of providing or supplying oxygen is the oxidizing agent. So here zinc oxide is the oxidizing agent, right? So this is the oxidizing agent. What is reducing agent then? Reducing agent is the species which gains oxygen. So carbon gains oxygen, right? So carbon is the reducing agent. Now students make mistake and they become confusing in understanding the identifying the reducing and oxidizing agent. Don't bother about these things, it is very simple. Now if you could identify the oxidizing and reducing process in a redox reaction, then it is pretty very easy to identify the oxidizing and reducing agent. So what is that trick? Dear students, always you keep in mind that oxidizing and reducing agent are present on the reactant side or the left hand side of the chemical reaction. So forget about the product part. So in a chemical reaction we have two reactants, right? So either one of which will be oxidizing or reducing agent. Now how can we identify? The one which has oxygen is capable of supplying oxygen, so that will be our oxidizing agent, and the one which does not have oxygen or which gains oxygen, so how can we identify which one is gaining oxygen? So for that you go to right hand side, product side, where is the oxygen? You see here oxygen is there, right? So oxygen is attached with carbon, look for carbon on the left hand side. So here we have only one species. If there are only two species, then it is very easy. One is oxidizing agent, then the next one will be our reducing agent. In another way also we can easily identify for oxidizing and reducing agent. If you could find the oxidation and the reduction reaction in a redox reaction, then you can do that. Now you see here, this is the oxidation reaction, right? The starting material of the oxidation reaction will be the reducing agent. You see here, this is the reducing agent, and the starting material of the reduction reaction will be our oxidizing agent. So by using this technique also you can easily identify for the oxidizing and reducing agent. So as far as redox reaction is concerned, you should know how to identify for the oxidation and reduction reaction, and how to identify oxidizing and reducing agent, and which one is oxidized and which one is getting reduced. So all these information you should know. So dear students, I believe you understood today's revision class. So still if you find it difficult to understand any of the topic, then you can contact us very well, as you can see the contact numbers and email address where you can post your questions, queries and your doubts. So see you all on another day with a new revision topic. Till then, take good care of yourself. Bye.